afternoon, KAZI listeners. You are tuned into the Iron Sharpens Iron Show, and I am your host, Latrice Cook, on this fabulous Wednesday afternoon here in the wonderful studio, ready to put some flavor in your ear. It is always an honor and definitely exciting being here to be able to talk to you, the KAZI listening audience, about views, issues, people, persons, places, and things that are associated with the criminal justice system, those persons that have previously been incarcerated and their families. That's what this show is all about. And I want to give a couple of shout outs right now because I had the wonderful pleasure yesterday of entering Haverty's so that I could go find us a rug for our office. And shout out to Misty and the other young man who was so good looking. I think his name was Don. Just want to give you all a shout out. Thank you all for tuning in to the Iron Sharpens Iron Show. 512-836-2887 is a number that you can call into if you have anything you need to say. And I so much this as I was driving in, I'm so used to hearing that wonderful voice of Tracy Farrow, Miss Easy Peasy, and I missed out on that today. But, shout out to her and continue to support and listen to her. And so I just wanted to say that is something that, you're used to having introductions and people kind of riding your show on in here, saying all these great things. And so I do miss that. Shout out to Tracy this wonderful Wednesday afternoon. And so many of you all who are listening and who have supported the work of Melge Justice Center, which is an organization in which I founded, 512-473-2525, because the staff is waiting there for your phone calls. If you have any information that you need that you will get from this show today, or anything that you need as a formerly incarcerated person or a person who has a felonious background who is struggling with issues that you're still facing even after being home for a while. I have had the privilege on last week of being at the opening session for the Texas legislature and watched all of that pomp and circumstance with many of our some of our senior workers and stuff who actually were there. Some people, it was their first time ever being a part of that. And so just wanted to say that was interesting because it lets you see who your elected officials are. But also just all the mayhem and chaos sometimes that can be associated with the legislative process. Seems like we already have a caller on the line. And I'm sure if that caller wants to have something to say, we're going to give you that opportunity. Good afternoon, caller. You're on the Iron Sharpens Iron Show.
Good afternoon, Latrice. Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Can't hear.
Can you hear me all right?
Can't hear.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Caller, give us just 1 second. We're trying to get you where we can actually hear you. We can't hear over here, so I don't know.
Okay, sure.
Caller,
I'll
if you're there, can you hear? Okay. Caller.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Great. Okay, so Latrice, I'm not going to mention my name. I'm going to keep names out of my mouth, except for people on TV, of course, like Donald Trump, which, I've never supported. But I want to talk to you because I've known you for a long time, and you're touching on probably one of the best battles that you can pick in life. And it comes to criminal justice. And this is the problem that I have with Donald Trump, okay? Because Donald Trump, it seems like all he wanted to do was build more jails and build more prisons. And I would like you to elaborate more on just how awful the Trump regime was.
I wish I would. Thank you, caller, for your comments. I'm not, let me just tell you something. I just want to be real clear about my position with regards to all elected officials and people who are in places where they have power or voice. I don't really get into all of that because my interest is how they are affecting the system that we're talking about. I don't really like to get in the weeds with that because my personal opinion about who's in power is not important. It's what are they doing with regards to this particular system. And when it comes to,
I totally get that, but see, the thing is like, because of Trump's 4-year tenure, public opinion has changed so much, and we have gone backwards. I mean, all the progress that we made in trying to reform criminal justice has gone backwards. It's because of Trump.
You really believe that?
Absolutely.
Okay. And
so I'll let you elaborate on that some more, and I thank you for your time, and I'm done. Carry on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for listening to the Iron Sharpens Iron show. So, thank you, caller, for your call and your comments. 512-836-2887. You know, everybody can chime in and say what they need to say about whatever issue it is as it refers to our particular show and our content. But I just don't personally, I don't blame all the fallouts and the things that are not happening within the criminal justice system on Donald Trump, because a lot of the stuff that we are experiencing in some of the barriers, that was way before Trump's time. And he probably hadn't made it much better for sure. But we have to be real and say that some of these issues have always existed and they haven't changed yet. So from that perspective, I understand what you're saying. We definitely have a guest in with us this afternoon, and I'm always excited to have people sitting in here with us so that we can discuss who they are, what their contribution is to this particular population, and so on and so forth. And so today we have the Texas Fair Defense Project with us, and Hans Maverick is a longtime Texas resident and a recent graduate of Austin Community College with an associate's degree in paralegal studies. He joined Texas Fair Defense Project in April 2022 as their pro bono program legal assistant. In that role, he is helping expand TFDP's capacity to provide direct criminal legal services, including record clearing and driver's license reinstatement to low-income Texas. Prior to joining TFDP, Hans worked as an office manager for the law office of Mark W. Smith, PLLC. He also has an extensive experience in volunteer criminal legal system reform advocacy with grassroots leadership. Mm-hmm. Okay. Texas Center for Justice and Equity and other groups. As a person who has been directly impacted by the criminal legal system, oh, wow, this is going to be wonderful. I don't know if I'm saying that. Is it Hans?
I said Hans.
Hans, okay. Hans has witnessed firsthand the disparate effect of that system on Black people and other people of color, low-income people, people with disabilities, and members of the LGBTQIA community. I'm so glad somebody had all those initials out there because I can never say it. Hans is the father of 2 adult children and an aging Siamese cat. When he is not fighting to end the criminalization of property, he enjoys reading books about history and philosophy, playing his acoustic guitar, listening to an eclectic range of music, and hanging out with friends and family. Hans is also pursuing his bachelor's degree in human dimensions of organizations at the University of Texas at Austin. Good afternoon, Hans Maverick.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on your show, Ms. Cook. It's a real honor.
Wow.
I love KAZI. I love what y'all do, and I love the Iron Sharpens Iron. I'm so glad that you have this show and that you shine a light on the issues that those of us who've been impacted by the criminal legal system face.
Wow. So I have to be really honest to my audience right now, and I have to tell you all that unfortunately, I didn't actually get to read his bio until right now. So I am extremely excited after reading this because it really opens up a little bit more. Before we talk about the Texas Fair Defense Project, I want you to talk about who Hans Maverick is. And before you even say that, let me give a shout out to Devin Jiles, who is a part of Melch who does such a fantastic job of preparing everything for this show. So shout out to Devin, who happens to be sitting in the studio, which is unheard of because he's going to be flying down 35, probably trying to get to Texas State shortly. So shout out to him for his preparation, and Serafino, of course, who keeps me straight all the time. Who is Hans Maverick?
Well, I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, but I moved to Texas as soon as I could, as they say. I moved to Austin in 1989. Married, raised a couple kids, and life seemed to be going pretty well for me. You know, I had a nice, cushy, white-collar job. Everything was going wrong, and I made some very serious mistakes and got caught up in the criminal legal system. And, the details of that are not that important or that interesting. My story is not that different from a lot of people's, but it was different for me in the sense that, I always thought of myself as caring about people of color and understanding that our country had a history of mistreating people based on the color of their skin or their background. But when you spend 3 or 4 or 5 days in a row on lockdown with a man from the Fifth Ward or from the Rio Grande Valley, you learn a lot about a person that you'd never learn just by reading books or listening to the radio or whatnot. So when I got out of prison, I made a decision to apply my skills and knowledge to help people like the ones I encountered. I'm fortunate to have come from a background where there was money available to help pay for a private lawyer. There was money to help me get started again, find a job. I had friends, I had connections. A lot of folks coming out of prison don't have any of that. And one of the challenges is the emotional trauma that results from being incarcerated. And so connecting with a support community, connecting with a spiritual community were all vital to my recovery, but also, and my, getting back in the mainstream, but also I came to realize that I had some skills and some knowledge. A friend of mine who was an attorney, Mr. Smith, said, you should go to school and become a paralegal. And as soon as I did, or shortly after I graduated, I found out about the position at Texas Fair Defense Project, and that's kind of what led me into that work. Although simultaneously I'd been working with groups like Texas Center for Justice and Equity and Grassroots Leadership and Austin Justice Coalition. Shout out to all of them.
Yeah, shout out.
Because I learned about lobbying. I learned, again, really gained some deep knowledge about how this system really works and how it works for folks who don't come from the kind of privileged background that I have.
So once again, I'm so excited to, sorry, my ears, I'm sorry. Once again, I'm so excited to have Hans here for so many reasons. I don't even know if we'll ever get to Texas Fair Defense Project at this point. We're going to have to go to break here in just a second, 512-836-2887. But Hans, I want to tell you right now that I have so many questions just based on what you presented. And one of the things that you said, sitting here as a Caucasian male, your experience coming out, as well as probably even going in, has been different. And I kind of want to expound just a little bit on that, if you don't mind, before we go into the other. You are tuned into the Iron Sharpens Iron Show, and I am your host, Latrice Cook, with the infamous Hans Maverick sitting in with me this morning. Don't touch that dial. Stay with us. 512-836-2887 is a call-in number. And we are back. You are tuned into the Iron Sharpens Iron Show, and I'm your host, Latrice Cook. Shout out to all those folks who keep listening. Thank you so much for your support. Shout out to Capital Metro and those folks over there listening, including Mr. Khalif Muhammad. We just appreciate your listenership. Appreciate all you all listening. In the studio with me this afternoon is Hans Maverick, who is with the Texas Fair Defense Project. But as he opened up the show, sharing about his own experience as being a person who has been justice involved. And Hans, I just kind of want you to get just a little bit about how you ended up becoming a person who has lived experience and what the difference as a white male, your what was your thought process as you were finding yourself being convicted or whatever the case was, and how has it been, as you said earlier before we went to break, that you had such a great support system waiting on you, and has that definitely lessened the barriers that exist?
Well, it's challenging to really untangle all the root causes that led up to my being incarcerated. But the fact of the matter is that alcohol and drugs were certainly a factor. Not really taking care of myself in terms of my mental health were certainly factors. And I ended up hurting somebody that was close to me, somebody that I cared about, a member of my family. And I feel a deep sense of regret about that. But I'm happy to report that those relationships have mostly healed.
Wow, wonderful.
Yeah, and a lot of it goes to the self-help support groups for folks who struggle with addiction. There are a lot of different kinds. And, back in the day, there was basically the one program that everybody knows about. And out of respect for that program, I don't name names or criticize, but there's a variety of programs available.
I hope it's not Centacor, but anyway.
Well, no, there's different programs for folks who have different spiritual outlooks and different value systems. Whether you're Christian or Muslim or Buddhist or non-believer or whatever. And so it was important for me to find a group that fit. And, one of the things about the privilege I experienced as a person from a middle-class background with some means is that I was able to bond out and not have to serve time in jail while I was waiting for my sentence to be finalized. And it was a wake-up call for me to get my house in order in terms of getting sober, getting back sober, and addressing my mental health issues. And it's because of that community that I had the support that I have. It's also because I come from a family that, in the past we've faced challenges, and sometimes you don't find out about your family's challenges until you have some of your own. But my dad and I had some very honest conversations about some of my family members that I didn't even know about. And because of that experience and because of his spiritual understanding, he forgave me for what I did, and he decided that he was going to do everything in his power to make sure I got back on my feet. So,
Wow.
Having my family made all the difference, having my support system made all the difference, and getting realigned with my spiritual practice, all those things made all the difference in terms of being prepared for prison when I went in, making the best of a terrible, terrible system while I was in. And then once I got out, having the opportunity to not only recover from my own challenges, but also be equipped to help other people. Mm-hmm. And really, to me, the thing that gave me meaning and purpose was, I'm not going to win by physically overcoming people. I'm not a big guy. I'm not a strong guy, but I can be empathetic. That's kind of my superpower, is I can listen to people and I can care and I can understand their situation, even if it's very different from my own. And I'll be honest with you, I came out of prison with as many teeth as I had when I came in. And that's important. It is important.
That's important. Yep.
That's only because I learned to stop and listen and learn how to de-escalate rather than escalate a difficult situation. And it's amazing how if you give people a chance to talk, they can talk themselves out of doing something they know is foolish. Mm-hmm. And they know is going to have bad consequences for everybody affected. And I wish I could say that everything went smooth sailing throughout but TDCJ, Texas Department of Criminal Justice, is
the worst.
It's not a vacation. Sorry. It's not summer camp. They don't sign you up for college the minute you arrive.
No.
The food.
And the question right there is contraband real in prison?
Oh, for sure.
And lots of it.
It's just like Alice's restaurant. You can get anything you want.
Yep. And you know what? We say that jokingly, but that the real part of that is, and I say this all the time now, not only is TDCJ and other entities turning out people that are felons, but they're turning out junkies now. Mm-hmm. And that is scary, Hans. That is a scary thing. And when you talk to people who have been in prison, they will tell you that it is easy to get the same drugs that you get on the streets inside. And that's crazy.
That is crazy.
And another thing that you talked about, I don't know how long you were in, but do you feel that because of you being a white male, that did you have an over exaggeration of fear, or is that a real thing?
Well, I'll be honest with you. The people that scared me the most were the white supremacists in the prison system. Yep. You know, there is a certain degree of, if you're the right skin color, there's a certain amount of recruiting, pressure. I only served a 5-year sentence, so I did not want to get tangled up in any kind of situation like that. I was like, the vast majority of people who end up in prison, they really just want to do their time, and they want to get out. They want to go home and go back to their family. This, in my experience, there certainly is a prison culture, and there is such a thing as institutionalization. But one of the biggest misconceptions I like to debunk is that there is a kind of a prison mentality. My experience from my own life and from working with a lot of folks is that when you give a person the opportunity to get back into the mainstream of life, what they want is to become just another ordinary tax-paying, hardworking, rent-paying, family-supporting citizen, just like everybody else. Mm-hmm. I chose not to get any tattoos when I was in prison. I choose not to. I've tried to avoid adopting a lot of the prison language because, first of all, I want to be an example for my family. I want to be an example for my children.
Were you already a father?
Yes.
Already a father when you went into prison? Okay.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
So those are things that it's just such a big misconception that there's such a thing as an offender. The system wants to put the label offender or inmate on people. And that's why one of the things, I love where I work and so many of the organizations that I work with, because we talk about person-centered language. And we use phrases like a person who has been impacted by the system, or a person who has been in custody, or persons experiencing homelessness. And because when you do that, you're talking about a whole person and their whole experience, not just the worst mistake they ever made or the worst thing that ever happened to them.
And I think that's important because all the time, and I've been in this work for 19 plus years, and one of the things that always kills me is people who purport to do reentry work who still refer to persons that have been incarcerated as offender. That is such an offensive and a negative and dark connotation. It just makes me ill. And my thing is that how much do you really know about being in reentry, and you can't even remove that word from your vocabulary? I don't care who it is, and that to me is offensive to even refer to a person as an offender. And I mean, I know that that's the language of the TDCJ and many of the other many prisons, but at the end of the day, it's such a Slavic word, if I can say that, I want to just kind of shift gears a little bit, just because you did bring in about where you're currently working, which is the Texas Fair Defense Project, which I have dealt with over the years under the previous director. I know a lot of good things that you all do. I want you to really talk about some of the work, who Texas Fair Defense Project is, and some of the work of TFDP.
Okay. Well, we started out as we were actually a project of the ACLU of Texas. Mm-hmm. And initially the focus of the organization was on the fact that while in theory a person who is incarcerated and does not have the money to pay for a lawyer is entitled to a court-appointed attorney or a public defender. But in practice, it's just like any other system. Unless you hold the actors, the power brokers of that system accountable, they won't do what the law plainly says they have an obligation to do. That's why I'll shout out to another group, TIFA, Texas Inmate. And I hate that word, but Texas
Inmate Family.
Yes. They do a lot of work to ensure that folks don't die of heat exposure, don't freeze to death, don't starve to death. And if it weren't for the work that organizations like that do, who knows what these institutions and institutional actors have to be held accountable by watchdog organizations like TIFA and TCJE and us. Mm-hmm. And so, like I said, our initial focus was on making sure people got an attorney and making sure that attorney actually represented the person effectively. As time went by, we started taking on strategic litigation. We actually had a case that went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we won. And the basis of that case was that a person needs to have legal representation from the moment they are arraigned in jail. Most people don't realize there's typically a lag from the time that the police write the affidavit, they issue the arrest warrant, the person is arrested. It may be months or long after that before they're even actually indicted. And in the meantime, if they don't have representation, then they're not able to prepare themselves to answer to the court and to respond to the charges. And so the point of that case was to ensure that people got effective representation when they needed it. We've also been involved in advocating at the state legislature. That's one of the things we're doing this year. We have made some progress. And in terms of, helping people get their records cleared, helping people get their driver's licenses back, but that's a never-ending fight.
Oh yeah.
You make 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So, and the last piece I'd like to talk about, if I may, about our project is that in addition to the advocacy work, and in addition to helping people get lawyers who need lawyers, we also do specific work with individual clients in getting all their tickets resolved or getting their criminal record cleared, and that's my role.
Okay, listening audience, this is real important. This is real important because if your driver's license is suspended, if you have things on your criminal record, this is the man. And so if you are listening right now, this is the person. If you have a suspended driver's license, let me see, a suspended driver's license, things on your criminal record. Mm-hmm. If you just need to obtain those type of things, this is the man on the air right now. Hans Maverick is the man. So I want to just put his name on the bathroom wall right now for those of you all who need to know. And Hans, how can people reach you? Just give your phone number to the organization. Do we have TFDPs? I bet you don't have.
Yes. Well, okay. I've got our direct line, and the best way to get a hold of us is you can call us directly 512-637-5220. You can go to our website.
Say that number again.
512-637-5220. And you can go to our website, which is FAIR, F-A-I-R, Defense, DEFENSE.org, fairdefense.org, very simple. And you can look for our service, about us, and request services. And not only that, there are opportunities to volunteer. If you're an attorney and you're looking for opportunity to do pro bono work, I'm the man for that. I work with pro bonos. I love our pro bono attorneys. I got to give a shout out to them as well.
Shout out to them.
Because we just don't have the capacity to do that work. No. And you can reach me directly by email at hmaverick, HMAVERICK, at fairdefense.org. And I hope you all blow up my email box because I love to help folks.
And I can tell you just from the energy that I'm receiving from Hans is that he's serious about this. He's one of those persons that is going to answer those emails and answer those phone calls. And, and so let's not be gun shy. You all can stop calling me over at Mel's now, and you can call him directly. But if you need that information, again, of course, we, have people on the line, 512-473-2525, and we're happy to help you to get in touch with Hans. I want you to talk a little bit more. Oh, and if you all want to join in the conversation, again, 512-836-2887. We got time. So I want to talk more about the work directly, but I want to think about the caller who called. And I want to talk about the fact that you all do a lot of work down at our legislature, the Texas legislature. And what this caller said about the former president not really making the criminal justice system worse. As a person who's actually been impacted by being incarcerated, and knowing, obviously, that you are very much up on current events and whatnot. What is your thought process about that?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I appreciate the caller's call, because I think they made a good point in that, there's a saying, as the light at the top shines, so cast the shadows. So the person who is at the top of the political power in our country does set the tone and the attitude for the rest of the country. On the other hand, I think it's important that we understand, before I got involved in this work, honestly, I didn't really know a whole lot about the difference between the U.S. Congress and the state legislature, and I didn't understand the role that state plays versus the federal government. The vast majority of our persons who are in custody today are either in a county jail or a city jail or a state prison. Relatively small portion of our incarcerees in this country, people who are incarcerated, are in a federal facility. Now, that's not to say that the federal government has not made a lot of horrible mistakes in terms of who they lock up. This whole thing about possessing a joint or a tenth of a gram of cocaine. And help me understand why crack and powder cocaine have been sentenced differently. But before I get off, I don't want to go too far off on a tangent. But the point is that the state really does have a lot more say in the day-to-day lives of Texans who've been impacted by the system or might be impacted by the system than the federal government.
And I think that that's important because, again, when you think about just our prison system, we have got one of the worst prison systems in the nation still in 2023. And it's really bothersome to think about. I say this all the time, I have aged in this work, and to think about that I'm at a 20-year pinnacle, of work, of doing this work. And right now, today, people that have a felony background can't rent or lease a place to live. I mean, that is crazy to me. And so when you think about just talking about, shout out to Del Valley Jail, by the way. I hate that keeps calling me while I'm on air right now. Shout out to you all at Del Valley. I can't pick up the phone right now. But anyway, when I think about just yesterday, how I spent time going to a place to go and talk to them about possibly renting a place to a person that was 55 and older than 55, and that they still take into consideration the fact that they committed a crime 19 years ago and will still deny them based on that, no matter what their credit score is. It's horrifying that we haven't made that kind of progress here in Texas. So I can't look at Trump and worry about, or the leader of our federal part, until I really think about what we could do right here locally to make a change in our state, and we won't. Do you all get those questions right now in your position at TFDP?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, like I said, the two main projects that I'm directly involved in have to do with criminal record clearing and with driver's license restoration. And one of the things, to talk about the record clearing part, it's not just that if you have a felony conviction, that you have a really hard time getting a job or getting an apartment. even if you have a charge that's been dismissed,
Yes.
it still shows up on your record. And that just blew my mind, honestly. When I first got involved with Texas Fair Defense Project, I was not aware of that. And we're one of the things we're working on at the legislature this session is to automate the non-disclosure of certain types of offenses. And by automate, what I mean is if you've fulfilled your obligation to the court, or the court has decided we're not going to go forward with this because we don't have enough evidence, there's no reason that should continue to be held against you in terms of finding work or finding a place to live or participating in a lot of other aspects of life, including some social organizations, some social media corporations can impose regulations on folks because of either because of a mistake that they made 20 years ago, or maybe a mistake someone else made 20 years ago, and it still hasn't been cleared up. And on the driver's license thing, it's surprising to me how many jobs want you to have a valid driver's license, even though you're not actually, it's not like you're driving for the company. If you're a delivery driver or truck driver, yeah, if you're out there on the road with an 18-wheeler, I definitely want you to have a good driver's license, you know? But if you're making pizzas, why do you need a driver's license? You know, I don't understand that. And I think people are becoming more aware of that, fortunately, but and honestly, the other part of this I want to talk about is it's not just the legislation that's a concern, but the culture around there are good people and bad people, and labeling people away, because the court can say, well, we don't think this person did anything wrong. Somebody lied on them. Somebody made a mistake. Somebody confused them with somebody else. But if an apartment association can say, well, we don't want you, the court may have said you're good, but we don't want you living in our place, I have to ask, is that really legitimate? You know, is that really permissible?
And the answer to that is no. It's not legitimate, because again, you have people, once you are free of whatever the allegation is, you have people who have already determined that even if you went through that process, something's wrong with you, you know, and so therefore you're again excluded. That is a huge thing, especially for people who have experienced incarceration, because you come out believing that you have done your time, and even if you're on parole, that you've done your time, and you still have this big barrier and this big barrier of being excluded from things that maybe your kids can be involved in that you can't because of your history or whatever. And so, you know, when does that stop? As a person who has experienced incarceration, Hans, and in the position that you're in now, do you feel that you fight more vigorously than had you been a person that never had this experience? And then also, as a person who hadn't been incarcerated prior to your experience, did you even care or know about people who were in jail? Or prison?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've come to realize is that we have a media culture, and this is not I'm not talking about social media or anything recent. I mean, going back to the 60s and 70s. The newspaper, the TV. I recently learned that police associations, and I'm not about trashing the police, you know, but there was in the 70s, there was a systematic way in which the idea was promoted, and it had a lot to do with the tough on crime initiatives of the Nixon administration. This idea that certain people are just bad or broken. And while I didn't want to believe that as a person who'd never dealt with the system, because that was the cultural milieu of the time, you know, you can't help kind of picking that up and kind of jumping to conclusions about a whole class of people because of what you see on TV, you know, Dragnet and One Adam 12. And, you know, we all know the Hill Street Blues. We all know those shows. And, you know, they really don't present an honest picture. Very rarely do they present an honest picture of the complex lives of the people who get caught up in those systems. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until, like I say, you spend 5 days in a cell on lockdown with a total stranger, you got to find something to talk about. You got to find something to do. And like I say, I've never fought myself out of a dangerous situation, but I've talked myself out of a lot of, and I've, more importantly, listened myself out of a lot of dangerous situations. And so to come back to your question, Latrice, absolutely. I don't just understand, I empathize because of my experience. And that's why I love where I work, because they knew my background, they knew where I was coming from, and they hired me exactly because of that.
512-836-2887. I have so many questions. I have abandoned the paperwork over here because, as I listen to you, first of all, again, I'm so grateful for your presence here this afternoon on the Iron Sharpens Iron show, your insight, and that I can feel your commitment in your heart as we're sitting here. Again, you were able to come out and have this level of support. What would have happened to Hans if that support hadn't been there? Do you think you still would have had your mind made up that I'm never going to go back into the system and these are the things I'm going to do?
That's a really challenging question. I appreciate you putting it that way, because I almost hate to even think about it. The system is like a black hole. I mean, once you pass that event horizon, and I'm not a physicist, so forgive me if I'm getting the science wrong, but once you cross a certain point in that system, it's very, very, very hard to ever come up out of it. And it is so tempting, when you can't find a decent job. I understand people. I met people who'd been 5, 6, 7, 8 times incarcerated, and some who shared with me quite honestly that they were almost better off in the system because there was so little support for them outside of the system. No decent place to live, no decent health care, certainly no behavioral or mental health care. And so I don't even know that I would be alive if you want the honest truth, if it weren't for, again, a spiritual community, the self-help recovery community, the family, all of those resources. And that's where the notion of white privilege really comes into sharp focus for me, because I don't have to worry like I know black people do. Like I never knew this was an issue until I got caught up in the system myself. I see the cop lights in my rearview mirror and I feel annoyed, not terrified. And that's something I wouldn't understand had I not been in the system.
I love the way you said it. Yeah.
And I understand the nature of intergenerational wealth and intergenerational privilege, because I look white, I talk white because I am white, and so I'm able to move in certain circles in society that they can, people jump to conclusions about the color of people's skins. We already know that, but
it's real.
It is real. And the system of not having access to education, not having access to health care, not having, even living in a neighborhood that's downwind from an incinerator or a refinery, that impacts a person's mental development, that affects their cognitive skills, that affects their ability to manage their impulses. And those are all important factors in why it is that we see people from certain parts of the state and certain communities showing up in jail and prison over and over again, whereas people like me who grew up in a nice suburban neighborhood, with trees and horses and whatnot, there aren't that many folks like me. We're definitely underrepresented in the system, whereas folks who grow up in places like the Valley and Oak Cliff and the Fifth Ward are way overrepresented.
And as you were talking about just the where you live, I remember growing up in Chicago on 103rd and Prairie. We lived next door to the welding shop. I'll never forget that. We had a really nice home on a major street, but it was our house. It was a welding shop. It was my mom's beauty shop, and then right next door to it was a tavern. I know, and as you were talking, I was saying one Adam 12 and dragged, and I was looking at Seraphine and Devin and thinking, they don't know what that is. We're really dating ourselves. But, when I think about that and how it was an alley, our backyard was like right up on an alley, and gang members and stuff like that. When we moved to Texas, it was like, we were like, what is this? Because it was cows and it was big yards and stuff like that. You're talking about a different mindset for real. Where you live does play a huge factor in how you perceive life to a great extent. I think that is definitely a real thing. And also, as you were talking, and you were talking about how you see things from a different lens because of your experience, and also seeing how people that are Black are definitely treated differently, even within the system. Mm-hmm. There's fear. Guards have fear of Black people in the system, and they are more prone to danger and violence because of it. And just sometimes by default, that would make their white cellmate be in mm-hmm. be at risk mm-hmm. because of guards being afraid. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about how hard it is to help someone who's had their license suspended to get their license back.
Well, that system is just so complicated. Texans love this. We have this very individualist mindset in Texas, which is something I actually cherish. I love living. I actually have family from Texas, so I have connections to this state. But part of that individualism is that in every little county, in every little town, and they want to do it their way. And so if you get a ticket in County A and one in County B and one in County C, when I'm trying to help you, I have to reach out to each and every one of those counties and get the information from them. And not that I mind doing that, that's just my job. But what I've realized is that because of that kind of rogue mentality that's sometimes present in some parts of the state, that makes it that much harder for someone to get the help they need, the answers they need. Technically, a person is not eligible for a court-appointed attorney, no matter how poor they are, if their only issue with the criminal legal system is traffic tickets. And that's because normally traffic tickets don't result in incarceration. But the fact of the matter is, first of all, you can get incarcerated behind a ticket if you have outstanding warrants. They will mm-hmm. pick you up and they will put you in jail. And the other thing is that just because you're not technically eligible mm-hmm. to hire an attorney, or you're not eligible to get a court-appointed attorney, you can hire one on your own if you want to. Mm-hmm. But for most folks, the system is so difficult to navigate. I've been at Fair Defense going on 9 months now, mm-hmm. and I'm still learning a lot. I want to give a shout out to my coworker Anna Prado. She is the senior legal assistant. Just got got promoted to that position.
Yay, Anna.
She's taught me so much, and she is constantly telling me. And my supervisor Yvonne London, I got to shout out her.
Shout them out.
Sarah Mae Jennings, our interim co-executive. They're both attorneys. They both work with me with the pro bono attorneys. But there's so much to this system that even folks with law degrees have trouble understanding, much less the individual citizen. And that's not to mention the cost. Mm-hmm. All the fees, all the fines, all the Omni-based system, which charges collection fees for people to get behind on their tickets. And those are all things we're working on resolving.
That takes a lot of time too. I think that that's one of the things that a lot of people don't realize about working in spaces like this is that they always ask you, how many people were you help? You know, when you go up for grants and stuff. And I think people don't really realize that sometimes it can take weeks for one person to get an issue resolved, months sometimes, that, you are actually working with someone and it can take a while. And my thing is that if we are successful in a 1 month period to see two people succeed, that's progress. Because one of the things that I've learned also is that not only do people need health care, jobs, housing, once they come home, they also need an ear to hear from them who they were before prison. What is it that you would have done if all hell hadn't broke loose in your life? And I have to say that one of the things that I know as a person that's been in this space for a long time, people want to have somewhere that they can go and somebody not judge them and hear who and what it is that they want to do with their lives after prison. And we as an organization at Melch try our best never to partner with anyone who doesn't deliver the service that they say they do, because it's nothing like being someone who has been gone from society for any period of time and then gets sent on this monkey goose chase to the food pantry, to the this, there, and the third, and then, all this, because it's very stressful, coupled with the fact that, you don't have your birth certificate, you don't have your Social Security, all these things. So, Hans Maverick will definitely be back, because I was in shock about his bio, and I just wanted to get into some of the personal experiences and how that is helping him to be a better person working in this space. And we didn't get to talk about that space as much as I'd like to. And so I definitely want to give you just a couple of minutes to give some shouts out to who's listening, family, friends, whatever. I want you to do that. And then also give us the phone number and the email address where people can reach out to you. And shout out to the Texas Fair Defense Project, who has been in this space and worked tirelessly at the legislature and with folks to really affect change.
Well, I appreciate you setting me up to shout out another one of my coworkers, Ms. Lulu Portillo. She is our systems navigator, and she works with folks on the non-legal issues that are adjacent to their criminal legal involvement. The number again is 512-637-5220. That's 512-637-5220. If you just have a general question, I recommend you email admin@fairdefense.org. That will go to all of us who monitor that email box, and then we can help you decide who within the organization is best suited to help you. And honestly, of course, we're limited in scope, so sometimes we refer folks to other organizations like Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid. I have to give them a shout out because of the important work they do. And the other legal aid organizations in Texas, Legal Aid of Northwest Texas, and Lone Star Legal Aid, they all do very important work as well. And so just a reminder that the phone number 512-637-5220, the website fairdefense.org, and my personal email hmaverick@fairdefense.org. Of course, we're also on Instagram and Facebook if you care to look us up that way.
Again, you have tuned into the Iron Sharpens Iron show, and I just want to leave a couple of real quick things to Susanna, who is listening to us all the way in Illinois. I think this was interesting that her suggestion was to talk to the Texas Education Agency that does not let people teach because of a charge of child neglect during a divorce, even though it was dismissed and has been expunged. This is a person who's taught for 26 years in a whole other state. And so we need to address that. So shout out to Susanna. Thank you for that. You have been tuned into the Iron Sharpens Iron Show. I am your host, Latrice Cook, sitting in the studio with Hans Maverick of the Texas Fair Defense Project. Wonderful opportunity to be in your, be here with you. Thank you so much. Shout out to RJ, who continues to, I don't know what all he does on that board, but he's doing something to keep us live and in color. So I appreciate that. Thank you all for your continual listenership to our program and your support. You can reach us at 512-473-2525, 512-473-2525. Please support KAZI 88.7 FM. We are your community radio station, and we'll be back with you next Wednesday at noon. And in the meantime, as you know, your success is important to us.